Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about President James K. Polk and the Mexican-American War, which he starts basically to get more land for the United States. Here are your goals. Try to answer these by the time the video is over. Alright, so let's start by talking about James K. Polk. There's a picture of him. Fine-looking man, slicked back hair. Serious guy, apparently. He's a slave owner from Tennessee, and he was the Democratic candidate for president in 1844. He manages to win the election by focusing his campaign on the idea of manifest destiny. Remember that idea that basically America is intended by God to conquer the North American continent. So his main idea is to get more land for the United States. He wanted to annex Texas, which up until that time was a independent republic, and he also wanted to claim as much extra western land as possible. So opponents of Polk claimed that his ideas and his desire to add territory to the U.S. would cause a civil war by upsetting the balance between free states and slave states, but he wins anyway, and he gets ready to go into office. So right before Polk comes into office, the people who are already in Congress decide that the best thing to do would be to go ahead and add Texas and Oregon at the same time. So as we learned in our last video, Oregon and Texas were both filling up in the 1840s with American settlers. So Congress decides that they're going to add both Oregon and Texas. That way they can add Texas as a slave state and they add Oregon as a free state. And what this would mean is that the balance between free states and slave states would stay equal, and it would prevent, at least for a little while longer, any serious conflict between the North and the South. So that means that when Polk comes into office, Texas is already part of the United States, so a big part of his presidential promise has already been accomplished. But Polk is not satisfied there. Nope, Polk wants to go on to take some territory from Mexico. So the first thing he does is he goes on to try and acquire California from Mexico. He first tries to buy California, but Mexico rejects the offer. When Mexico won't negotiate, he decides that instead he's going to start a war with Mexico and take California the hard way. So he sends some troops down into the disputed area between the United States and Mexico. He sends it down to like that little bottommost green part between Texas and Mexico, and basically has American troops just like hang out there. And eventually when American troops and Mexican troops get into some kind of combat in this area, it's not really clear who starts it. A couple American troops are killed, and Polk uses this to claim that Mexico has attacked America and uses this pretext to invade Mexico. So Polk gets the American army, has it go down and invade Mexico, and this is the beginning of the Mexican-American War, which lasts from 1846 to 1848. The American War is not really a very fair conflict. Mexico is still a very young nation, not very powerful. America is growing very quickly and way outnumbers Mexico. So America beats Mexico basically no problem. They stomp all over the Mexican army, march into Mexico City, and occupy the city by 1847. So it takes them about a year and a half to win the war. At this point, Mexico is totally beaten and forced to sign the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. This treaty basically says that America would pay Mexico $15 million in exchange for a huge chunk of Mexico's northern territory. This deal goes through, Mexico gets its money, America gets the land from Mexico. This territory is called the Mexican Cession. Alright guys, so here is a picture of the Mexican Cession. You can see that it includes a huge chunk of the United States, including, most importantly, the very rich and fertile area of California. So this whole thing is problematic because, so it's good for America because more territory is always good, but it's also possibly bad for America, because if you look at where this territory sits in the United States, it's all on the southern half of the United States. What this means is that there's a possible risk that all of this new territory might upset the balance between free states and slave states in the United States. And if that balance is upset and one side feels like it's losing out to the other, it could possibly cause a civil war. And so Emerson, who some of you guys might remember is one of the leading transcendentalists in the United States, said that taking this land from Mexico was like swallowing poison, and that it would eventually kill the nation by splitting it apart. And as we're going to see in the next couple weeks, Emerson was almost right. The addition of California upsets the relationship between North and South, and it is one of the main causes that eventually leads to the Civil War. So even though the Mexican-American War seems like it's good for the United States on its surface, it actually causes a lot of problems and almost splits the United States in half. Thanks for hanging in there with me. We'll talk more about this tomorrow.